Hi, I'm Sarah Schatz, and you're listening to Kindle Curiosity, a podcast for curious souls where we explore the creative process. This podcast is powered by the Kindle community on Patreon to keep things advert-free. Take a seat by the fire, and let's welcome today's guest. So before we get to today's episode, I have a really exciting announcement. We have a brand new session of Camp Kindle opening, so if you've been thinking about joining Patreon, this is a great time. Camp is a virtual creative retreat that I put together for my Kindles. We have new sessions twice a year, and all the past sessions are archived for patrons of all levels, starting as little as $1. And when camp starts, there'll be weekly activities, which could be video craft tutorials, journal prompts, or micro adventures, and all of these add up together to earn a badge. And this session we're earning the Wonderment badge. So a lot of the art projects are really free form and embracing serendipity and relinquishing control. We'll also be doing activities like a fairy picnic, roasting s'mores, and a scavenger hunt. Camp Kindle is perfect if you're feeling kind of distant from your creativity, if you'd like a creative jumpstart, or even if you feel like you're not a creative person. So if you enjoy this podcast, you will love Camp Kindle. It's designed for adults, but we have had families participate with their kids, and it's always fun to see how they interpret the prompts. This session is particularly family-friendly, so if you have a bunch of bored kids at your house, this could be the perfect thing for you. We start on July 1st. If you sign up by the end of June, you'll get an early bird bonus, but you can also sign up late. So if you're not listening to this until August or even September, you can still sign up. All of the past sessions are archived online, so patrons can camp at your own pace, and you can even earn badges that we did last year. So if this is sparking your curiosity and it sounds like something you're interested in, you can find all the details at curiouspixie.com. And without any further ado, let's get on to today's episode. Laetitia Maklouf is a gardener, writer, and podcaster. She's author of The Virgin Gardener and Sweet Peas for Summer, and she has an infectious energy for plants. She also has a way of making the world of gardening feel approachable for everyone. Laetitia manages her own lovely London garden in just 5 minutes a day. Welcome, Laetitia.
Thank you very much, Sarah. It's an absolute honor to be on here. Thank you very much for having me.
I am so excited to talk with you today, and that I was able to get your books all the way from England.
Oh, what do you think? Has it inspired you?
I really wish I'd had them from the very beginning because it felt really intimidating to begin.
Yeah.
There's such a gap between what people assume that you already know when you actually know nothing.
Well, I found that too, and I think that's the reason why I wrote that first book was I wanted to write the book that I wish I had at the beginning. And there is a huge gap. And the reason why is because once you learn a certain amount in gardening and you get into it, it actually becomes easier to use the Latin names, and you forget. It's so amazingly fast. The speed at which you forget how it felt not to know anything, because in gardening you always feel like a beginner, or at least I do. So it doesn't matter how much I know. I always feel like the rookie in the room,
because there's always more to learn.
Yes, and I think it is very. I can forgive people who forget the people who literally don't know what a perennial is. I mean, it took me a huge amount of courage to put my hand up and ask that simple question, and so many people in that room were glad that I had asked it. So
I find the same with cooking. When I was very first learning to cook from scratch, I would ask questions, and people wouldn't really know how they did a thing because they did so much from instinct.
Yes.
And there was one recipe in particular I wanted to learn from scratch: chicken dumplings. But it wasn't the kind of recipe that you can write down, because it was like a pinch of this and a dash of that, and things had to be a certain consistency and texture. And what I ended up doing is filming this grandmother teaching her granddaughter how to make make these chicken dumplings. And so we can both go back and watch the video and see the texture things are supposed to be. And I really think that's the way to document family recipes is by video.
It sounds like a very good idea. Absolutely.
What you do on Instagram in your Insta stories is video too, which is perfect because we can see exactly what you're doing.
I think it's essential because I don't know, gardening is such gardening as in cooking. There's so much grey. There's very little black and white, and there are a squillion different ways to swing a cat. And the way I do things is just one of many, many, many ways. And so I think it is really nice when you can actually show people what you're banging on about, and in real time as well. And that's why I love Instagram. I think it's, for that reason, it's incredibly infectious. There's nowhere to hide. You can't sort of, especially in gardening, I mean, you can't prune something and then decide you got it wrong and stick it back on again. You have to say, whoops, I didn't mean to cut that bit. And it makes you human. But it's been a revelation watching other gardeners on Instagram doing things and actually, seeing what they're talking about. It's a good thing.
Yeah. So did you garden growing up?
God, no. I don't think I sort of even quite went for a walk until I was in my early 20s. I came from London. I was born in London and raised in London. And I was not the least bit interested in gardening or gardens. Every garden looked pretty much the same to me. And I couldn't understand. I thought it was a thing old people did, And then, well, what happened was that I was in my 20s and I was living in this flat in West London, and I think I'd probably just had a breakup and I was a bit sad, and I looked inside a cupboard. I used to be a hoarder and I still am. I'm terrible. I just can't sort of face tidying up for a long, long time. Anyway, I opened this cupboard and the world fell out of it. I can't tell, it was deluged with all this stuff. And I think it was a grand illustration of the state of my mind at that particular time. And I thought, I'm just going to clear out this one cupboard. And I think it's a bit like 5-minute gardening, really. It's the first time I really thought to myself, it's okay. I don't have to do the whole thing, but I'm just going to do just this one cupboard, or maybe just this corner of this cupboard, and I'm just going to make a start. And once I got over that feeling of overwhelm, at the back of the cupboard, I found an old Christmas stocking, which is a terrible thing to admit, that I hadn't opened my Christmas stocking, but I hadn't. And again, a grand illustration of my selfish state of mind. Anyway, I opened it up, and at the bottom there was a mouldy orange and a £2 coin and a packet of sweet pea seeds. And I thought, I'm gonna plant these seeds, and then when they don't grow, it will just be an illustration of how terrible my life is. And it'll just show me how dreadful the whole thing is. And so I went outside and I got myself a mug and I put some soil in it, and I put the seeds in, and below me, but they sprouted. And then I thought, okay, well, that's something quite extraordinary. I hadn't done anything. I knew enough to know that you actually have to have kind of drainage holes in the bottom of a mug. You can't sort of. But I put the seeds in, and then I put the thing under the tap. It was completely saturated, but for some reason, those seeds decided to sprout. They didn't flower, I have to say. There's the caveat. It wasn't that good, but I think the sprouting of the seeds was enough, and I quit my job, and I signed up for a course in practical horticulture. And I think it was very good for me because it was a completely different world, and I was able to get away from the things that I was doing before, which, I was working in an office. And I think working with soil and being outside, well, it's being proven now. It has extremely therapeutic effects. And it sort of sprang from there, really. So that was how it all started. Long story, wasn't that? Very long story. Sorry about that.
So that was my next question. You answered 2 in 1. So I'd love to hear a little bit about the course, what that was like.
So it was very overwhelming. This is the word I'd use to describe that at first, because it was full of wonderful ladies, most of them ladies, who had large gardens of their own, and they wanted to learn a bit about the plants that were in the garden and possibly tell the gardener what to do. And I didn't have a garden. I had a balcony. So I was extremely lucky that I did have some outside space. I had a balcony and a sort of backyard, a tiny backyard, which is the entrance to my flat. I'm very thrilled that these people sort of took a punt and took me on. And what happened was that we went to visit a lot of gardens, and we had lectures with the most wonderful, inspiring people who really knew what they were doing. So I actually got to see people taking cuttings, sowing seeds, all that kind of stuff. And I was given extremely practical solutions for all these types of skills. And I was able to kind of mimic that, go home and do it myself a little bit. But in terms of actual gardening, I never got to any soil until February 2010, when I got my first real proper garden, when I could actually dig in the ground. Before that, I was literally gardening in pots.
I think that stops a lot of people from starting.
Well, I actually think it's a total blessing because it takes away option paralysis. It's kind of just completely removes that problem of, what shall I plant? The world is my oyster. Okay, I can only plant in pots. That still gives you too much choice, by the way. But it does narrow it down a little bit. And I've got this specific aspect and these specific conditions, and it's an object lesson in right plant, right place, and it's a great thing. So anyone out there with a small space or somewhere that they feel is a restrictive kind of area for gardening and that narrows their options, I would say lucky you, and embrace that.
I know you also said in your book that you don't believe in green thumbs and black thumbs.
No, I don't. That's a complete myth. It's all about being interested. You can become good at anything as long as you're interested enough to care. And with gardening, it's really, really simple. And people like to make out that it's complicated because they're embarrassed, that they didn't water. It's that simple, just like water your plants. That's it. It's one thing.
Yeah, I get so distracted with other creative projects because I have so many things going that's the thing. It's like remembering until you get into the habit where it becomes part of your routine. And so I started with some very forgiving herbs.
Yeah.
And I'm lucky to live in a forgiving climate where it rains here.
Yeah.
And so for the first year, actually my husband almost killed the herbs at first because he was from Oklahoma, where you really have to water.
Yes, of course, super dry.
And so we almost drowned them.
Yes, as I was about to say, except for things that don't like too much water. And then you have to, you have to change your approach a little bit.
But once you learn, like you said, your plant, and you mentioned a lot in your book to notice where they're from, which will tell you a lot about what kind of watering they want.
But you know what? It doesn't matter if you kill your plants. I think people don't forgive themselves enough. Everyone's so hard on themselves. It's as if, who's standing there, standing over you saying you've only got one shot at this, If your plant dies, well, what a great opportunity. Go out and get another one and start again.
Right. And you probably learned something about how to take care of it.
Yeah. Yes. And stop beating yourself up. It's not like you killed a person. It's a plant. It probably dropped some seeds before it died,
I love that. That was the most magical thing, is the second year when the plants started coming up on their own. And I was like,
yeah,
what is happening?
Amazing, isn't it?
It is.
And I always think that what you're talking about there, for people that don't know, is perennials, is what I first was speaking about, that I didn't know what it meant. And a perennial is something that it retreats underground. around over winter, and then it comes back to surprise and delight you the next spring. And it is the most wonderful surprise when you don't know what it is and you're not expecting it, and you think everything's died a death. It's the most wonderful thing. Love it. I have a love affair with perennials, and I think they're the second thing you come onto when you've had your little flirtation with annuals. You get onto perennials and you realize that they're the keepers.
Right.
Yeah.
The ones that come back.
Indeed. Yeah. They're the good guys. The guys you should be dating.
Right. I love how you use all of these metaphors in your books that really help you understand.
Oh, I don't know. I sometimes, the rare occasions when I read back my books, actually I do, when I say rare occasions, I do sometimes read back because I write a column every week and I actually have to refer back quite a bit sometimes. Anyway, sometimes I do cringe a little bit, I got to say, about the metaphors and the way I describe things, because I was a lot younger then. And it's quite a 90s way of writing. I realised how very, very influenced I was by other writers like Nigella Lawson and Nigel Slater, cookbook writers, other writers of nonfiction. And I can see that I really have it's kind of osmotic thing, you know, that their style seeped into me. And you can really read it in my in my not as good prose as them.
Well, I think that happens with any creative endeavors. When you look back on something you made several years ago, it's not what you would make now.
No.
So.
No, but that's okay, you know. And I think I reread those books. Yes, I cringe slightly, but I'm also fond. I look fondly on them. And it's, you know, there are some things that are really terrible. I really do regret writing about using a particular herbicide, which I shouldn't have done, but I wasn't to know. So again, one has to forgive oneself. You move on.
Right.
And luckily, you know, I'm still here and I'm able to tell people I was wrong, you know.
That's true. That's one of the great things about writing a book now is the book doesn't have to be the end. It can actually be the beginning of the conversation. So going back to something you said earlier about being inspired by cookbooks, I think that really comes through because what you've done is you've really written a cookbook for gardening, which I found really, really approachable. Because some of the gardening books I've read before are really dense with information, but the way you have projects or flowers to plant and then a big picture of what you're going for, I think it makes it really easy to kind of dip in and out.
That's right. I mean, I wanted to create something that did feel like a cookbook and that was project-based, because that's what I respond to. I don't want to have to read an entire book that's going to make me into a gardener. I want little projects that I'm going to have fun with along the way while I'm learning to be a gardener. And I think, it's sexier, isn't it? Come on. And that's how I sold the book to my publisher, you know, and it's still the way that we are. In fact, I had a meeting today with my new publisher and it's pretty much still the way that they at least want me to write, because it is something that's a lot more accessible than some rambling or very, very factual sort of handbook.
Right. The first gardening book I have, it's a really old one. It's Victorian. It's really interesting, but it's dense. And it doesn't have as much pictures and stuff because it's antique.
Sure, yeah.
So this was just so much like, I want to do that. I want to find that plant. I want to make that thing.
Yes, absolutely. It got you.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about your writing process.
Yes. My writing process. The thing is that I write to deadline. So I've got a nice job which keeps my hand in, because as you probably know, I'm a full-time mum as well. So I work from home. So it's made me pretty efficient with my time. And I find that even if I have a long lead time for something, my best writing is done pretty much the night before with a glass of wine in my hand. And that's just my way. That's how I have learnt how to do it. But I think it only works that way because I've honed that art of I do it every single week. And what's nice about the work that I do, my regular work for the Sunday Times, is that it's a little column and it's 250 words. And a short column is quite a tricky one to write, especially when you've got to get a lot of information into it. And so that keeps me practiced. And it also, well, it forces me to take away a lot of fluff. So the way I start, if I've got a blank space in my head, or I generally know what I'm going to write about, and then I literally just start. And it's almost like a stream of consciousness. It's almost as if, I'll start with a sentence that I might have read in someone's book that I'm reading right now, and then I'll make it sort of about what I'm writing, just loosely based around. And that's my favorite way of just getting going. That first paragraph will probably go, but it gets me started. So I don't know, is that what you do?
It is. Is
it?
Otherwise, I stay in my head too long. You just have to start writing something.
Yeah.
And once you have something, you can edit, you can change. Yeah.
Yes. You can't edit a blank page. There has to be something down there. And so generally, the finished article, literally the finished article, is going to be the last couple of paragraphs in, say, 4 paragraphs that I write. So I get into it pretty quickly, and then I'm quite fierce about editing it, and then I just press send, and it's really, really, it's almost like a sort of business-like thing. I do not agonize about it. And I remember that when I first was asked to write a book, I was actually asked to write my first book. I didn't pitch it. I didn't write a proposal. I didn't do anything. Somebody asked me to do it. And she said to me, have you ever written a book before? And I said, no. And she said, could you write a book? And a little voice came up from inside of me and said, yes, I can. And I didn't know. I honestly didn't know. It wasn't a lie, but
it was your intuition.
Yeah, it was like, there was definitely a sense in which I'm just going to say yes. I'm just going to go and do this. And it was not difficult because I gave myself permission to be quite loose with it at the beginning, and I very quickly got into a rhythm. Now, writing a book, and I've never written a fiction book. I've written fiction essays and stuff. It's not the same. A book is like a marathon compared to a jog, and it's really about getting to my desk. 90% of the effort is getting to my desk. Do you find that?
I do.
So once I'm at my desk, it sounds so jammy, but it just comes out. It just sort of all splurges out. And again, it's that process with writing a book of just get something down, get it down, get it down, get it down. And when you're interested in something and passionate about something, that thing will just come out, spill out onto the page, and then you've got something to edit. And even if you're left with nothing of what you originally put down onto the page, you've managed to do it. So yeah, so that's the process really. There's no magic about it. It's like yoga. Get on the mat. Mm-hmm. Just get on the mat.
And so, is it a secret, or can you tell us what you're working on now?
Oh, it's not. I can't tell you right now. No, okay. But it's you probably guess what it is.
But you are working on something.
I'm about to start working on it. Yes. Yeah.
Awesome. So how does curiosity play a part in your gardening?
Well, gardening is about curiosity, isn't it? It's first about thinking. I mean, from that first sweet pea sprout that came up, my first question was, how the bleep, bleep, bleep did it do that? And so that was the reason why I quit my job and went to gardening school, is because I had to know how that did that. And there was a time, and there still is really, there still are times when I get quite geeky about the whole thing. I'm very into the science of it. Botany, I started but didn't finish a botany course because it actually was, it got over my head. I'm not ashamed to admit there was too much maths that I didn't understand, too much chemistry that I didn't understand. But the fact remains that I do read a lot of sort of biology books for dummies and stuff like that. So yes, I'm a bit fascinated and I am very curious. But day to day, the curiosity side of it really revolves around looking very deeply into detail. So today I was pinching out some dahlias and I saw some ladybird babies, and they were right where I was pinching out. And I realized that they were there because when I'd pinched out the little tips, you pinch out tips in order to make the plant go bushy. So to stop it reaching for the sky, if you pinch out the tip of the plant, you make the shoots on the sides go whooshing out instead. So on the tips, I opened up the tip and I saw loads and loads of tiny little black fly. And I realized that, gosh, well, the ladybird mum, she knew when she put her baby there, she knew that there were going to be black fly there for that ladybird to eat when it as it was growing. And I'm wondering about that now, and I'm about to Google that when I when I finish this podcast. How do they know?
Yeah, and gardening really makes you slow down and look and be mindful. The whole mindfulness thing is real popular right now.
It is, isn't it? I think people think I'm a lot more zen than I am. I was thinking recently about I went on a little workshop with, what's her name? Silver Pebble 2, she's called Emma.
Emma Mitchell.
That's right. And she used to be a biologist, and she was talking about studies which have shown that proximity to the earth and being around green things, I mean, that the science is about to prove that it changes your brain chemically. I mean, it's only a matter of time. And it is true. It is exactly like it will take precisely 10, 15 minutes for me to calm down once I start gardening. And it is absolutely true. Do you feel that when you go out into the garden? I think there's something about bare feet on grass and the smell and...
Yeah, I think it's you and the weeds, you know? You have something to focus on that keeps those other thoughts from kind of like coming in. That's how it works for me anyway.
For sure. When you're weeding, particularly when you're weeding or when you're scrabbling about in the earth looking for, making sure things are tidy. When you're doing the kind of husbandry aspect of gardening, it is amazing how focused you become. And it is like meditation. It is like, wax on, wax off, breathe in, breathe out, that kind of thing. Your mind doesn't tend to wander, or if it wanders to good places. So it is you in the weeds.
I have a lot of, it's grass really.
Yeah.
Because we've made a brand new bed.
Oh yeah.
And so we did our best to get what we could out before we started. Mm-hmm. But I suddenly have a whole new understanding of the term grassroots movement because I always thought it meant humble beginnings, but no. It's like fearsome and mighty and underground.
Is it couch grass?
I don't know what kind it is, but it has these roots and they keep shooting up.
It runs.
Yes, it's a runner grass.
Yeah, it's couch grass. Yeah, you have to chase it through the earth.
Yes.
With a sort of widger thing. And it's I mean, you've got to admire it, right?
Right. It's so determined.
And it's the sort of, that's the sort of way I would like my children to be. Just take up space in the world.
Yeah.
If you can't push past people, just go underground and sprout up under their feet.
Right. I'm like, I thought I weeded this. Where did you come from?
But yes, I agree with you. And there's no such thing as a weed, is there? It's just about keeping a balance.
Yeah. I love the flowers that are considered weeds. I keep planting them, like forget-me-nots and...
Yeah, beautiful. Oh, God. But those are useful weeds. You see, forget-me-nots they spread themselves about, but in a very polite way, don't they? Very polite. And if you don't want them, you can easily pull them out. The couch grass is a little bit more...
Yeah, more intense. It is the enemy.
It is the enemy. What are you planting in your bed?
Oh, well, so I started with herbs a few years ago and they're in the back. And we've just finished the bed for flowers. Mm-hmm. So I have Russian sage, daffodils,
lovely,
hyacinth, and I had some foxglove.
Lovely.
And I've planted a bunch of seeds.
Cool.
That have sprouted and I hope they flower.
What are your seeds?
Again, with the weed wildflower type seeds. I have chicory.
Lovely.
Chamomile, bachelor button.
What's bachelor button? Never heard of it.
What else? Cornflower.
Oh, yes. beautiful.
Yeah, it has so many names.
It's a really Bachelor button. That's a lovely name.
I love all the old-fashioned names.
I can just imagine a sexy kind of Hugh Grant bachelor with a cornflower in his buttonhole. That's wonderful. I love it.
And let's see what else. Hollyhock and larkspur.
Wonderful.
And then some white echinacea. And that's most of it.
So very cottagey.
Yes. I visited, I went to school in London. Mm-hmm. And I visited, Stratford upon Avon and the cottages. And I wanted to bring some of that home here.
Yes. And you should.
So that's the vision.
I think it's nice to bring different parts of your life experience, things to remember, past times by. Very nice. Could create a tapestry of memories.
Yeah.
In your garden.
Yeah, I even planted a few bluebells. So
yeah,
it's nothing like walking through a bluebell forest.
But it will be.
Yeah.
And that's the loveliness of it, really, is that trees you've got to plant for your grandchildren. But, you are thinking a little bit more long term than with anything else with planting a garden. So it's quite nice just to sit back and say, I'm cool with being patient on this one.
Right.
And it's amazing how quickly your brain and your patience turns into something much more flexible. It just becomes elastic because things seem to start happening so fast when in fact in your previous life, before you were doing gardening, before you were doing you would have thought, oh God, this is taking forever, this thing to do. And in fact, once you get into gardening, it all goes too fast. Suddenly things have grown up and you can't believe 3 years have whizzed by.
Yeah.
It stretches and contracts time in the strangest way.
Yeah, I definitely notice the seasons more.
Yes.
Now.
Yeah.
After undergrad, I worked in the theater.
Yeah.
Where you're inside in the dark for hours at a time.
Oh my God.
You never see the sun.
Like being in jail.
Kind of. And so this is like, wow, look at all this life that's around me.
Oh God.
So let's talk about your 5-minute garden philosophy.
Yeah. So that's really, I started it just to keep myself accountable, really, I suppose. I'll tell you the preamble to this is that after I had my first kid, 2 other kids came 4 years later. And the garden that I had sort of designed and made when I just had one child got away from me. It truly got away from it. It was totally overwhelmed. So by the time the 3rd child came along, it was like a jungle. And, I was supposed to be this, gardener person. So embarrassing. And I kind of got away with it for a few years saying, oh, well, I like the sort of, ravaged look. But basically, the reason why it got like that was because I was overwhelmed. I was a mother that wasn't frightfully good at, juggling things. And I was doing this kind of thing of like, oh, the garden needs sorting. I'll devote an entire day this month. I'll do it the whole lot on Wednesday and Thursday.
Yeah, I have a bad tendency to do that.
Right.
And so I'm finding your 5-minute garden experiment very inspiring because I have been doing the same.
Right. So that clearly wasn't working because you devote an entire day and it overwhelms you. It overwhelms you. You look at it means when you've got a whole day to garden, you don't know where to start. You're looking at the whole garden and thinking, where am I going to start? What am I going to do? This needs doing first. And you get distracted by all this stuff. And in the end, you just go in and have a cup of tea. Or maybe you just buy a pizza and sit in front of the telly. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that didn't work for me. For some people, that way of working is fine, but it didn't work for me. So then I redesigned the garden. We were going to have an extension done on the house, and I decided to redesign the garden so that it was manageable for me. So that was step 1. And step 2 was maintaining that redesigned garden. It had fewer flowers and it had more repetition of those flowers. But I decided that I was going to do 5 minutes a day, and I put it on Instagram because I needed to stay accountable to that commitment, because I knew that this could easily happen again, because I am that person. I mean, I'm going to tell you a story, right? I once opened a cupboard and I found inside it an envelope from 7 years previous address that I hadn't opened. And inside that envelope was a check for £700. Okay, so like that's who I am, right? Okay. So I need 5 minutes a day. I need a sort of structure. And it really caught on. I think a lot of people are like me. They may not want to admit to losing £700, but being that stupid. But yeah, I think a lot of people are like me, and 5 minutes a day goes with the second kind of the adjunct to that is start at the back door. Okay, so the first thing you walk into that needs doing, just do that. So whatever it is, even if it's right at the end of the day and you got your glass of wine, you come back from a party and you're wearing your high heels, go out and do your 5 minutes. Do whatever it takes. Do tie in one tendril, yank out one weed, I don't know, snip off one dead head. That's it. And just be in your garden. It's really about being in your garden. The doing comes very, very easily once you get yourself out there,
Yeah, I found the same. It's like with writing.
Get to your desk. Yes. Yeah. It's exactly the same thing. You can apply it to any area of your life that you feel is important. I wouldn't say do it for ironing though, or anything like that, but something that brings you joy and you don't find you get enough of, yes, 5 minutes a day is a good thing to do.
So while I have you here, I'm going to pick your brain a little bit.
Okay.
About deadheading.
Yes.
So like I said, I started with herbs, and a lot of this is transferring to the flowers. I'm finding there's some universal truths about plants. So I know more than I thought I did. And I know with my herbs, I want to cut off the little buds as soon as they appear so they keep making leaves.
Yeah.
So where's the balance for that with flowers? And do all flowers need to be deadheaded or just certain ones?
Well, again, I'm not an expert, but it's very much about using your intuition. And there's a general truth about this, which is that plants make flowers in order to produce seed. And once they produce that seed, why would they bother making any more flowers, right? So if you kind of fake an attack on them, you remove their flower before it makes a seed, then that plant will try and make more flowers. And that's generally true for all plants. Now, obviously, there are loads and loads of plants that you wouldn't even bother deadheading because the flowers are too small, or because it just, doesn't work, like clematis, for example, or whatever. But generally, for plants that you have in your garden, plants in your flower bed, and the ones that you want to see more of, perennials, deadhead away, or even just chop the whole lot off in one fell swoop. I'm about to do that to a big cloud of geraniums. Chop it all down, give it a haircut, give it a feed and a water, and it'll give you a second flush. They call it a flush.
A flush.
A flush. So with herbs, you definitely don't want them flowering.
Right.
You want the leaves, don't you?
Right.
So you any sign of a flower, that's actually a sign of, something like parsley or coriander or something like that, that's a sign of something called bolting. It needs water and it needs that flower removed, because otherwise your leaves will get bitter. You don't want that, do you?
No.
No, she says.
No bitterness in the garden.
No, but again, what I come back to is, just if it takes a year or two, just watch and see. Take off half the flower, chop off half the flowers of one billowing mass, and see what happens. And you will use it as an experiment, and you'll see. Yeah. You'll see that half will come back, or maybe it doesn't. Maybe it doesn't like being chopped. It doesn't matter. You're very unlikely to kill a plant by doing a bit of chopping. And I think people don't trust their intuition enough when they're gardening. And again, I'll come back to this. If you get it wrong, who cares? You learned something. Don't be sad. Just make a mistake. I mean, what is that thing about comfort zones? I don't know. You make mistakes out of your comfort zone, but that is where the magic happens, isn't it?
Did you see a YouTube video about that today?
No, haven't watched any YouTube today. Don't worry, I'll get my YouTube in later. I've been watching things about bullet journals. I love watching YouTube bullet journals. It makes me go to sleep at night. I love it. Do you bullet journal?
I think I tried once. I like journals and notebooks and stuff, but something about the bullet journal just didn't stick.
I love it. In fact, I'm thinking about sharing my bullet journals because it's changed the way I do things so much.
Yeah, people love it. I don't know if I didn't stick with it long enough to find the love or if I'm just not the person to do it that way.
I think it's wonderful because it's one book for everything. Like I can't be dealing with like 5 different books for 5 different areas of my life. I need just everything in one book.
Yeah. Maybe I have a notebook addiction is my problem.
Yes.
So I like all the books.
Yeah, you just need to have all of the books, don't you?
The gratitude journal, the planner.
Yes, I get it. No, I do understand.
Just a whole stack.
Yeah, I know the feeling.
Yeah, maybe when I'm a mom, I won't be able to handle that anymore, and I'll need to pare it down.
God knows, I don't know how. It's so many different ways of doing it, aren't there? But yeah, I like having everything in one book.
So speaking of being a parent, I like to ask, I'm not a parent yet, but did becoming a mom change your view of creativity at all?
Yes, it changed absolutely everything about my view of creativity. Before I was a mother, I would spend so much time staring out of the window, gathering my thoughts before I ever put anything down. And that was a luxury I didn't have when I became a mother. And you know what? It didn't make the blindest bit of difference. In fact, my first book was written before I had children, and my second book was written after I had children. They both took not very long, except that the first book had about the same amount of time as I was writing. It had just thinking and whiling away the hours, being anxious about it.
So what else, other than gardening, what else fascinates you?
Other people fascinate me. I spend a lot. I'm very nosy. I have a huge number of interests other than gardening. I love cooking. I love interiors. I love crafting. I love embroidery and knitting and all those things that I'm going to get back into. Journaling. I love sitting. If I had time, I would just sit in a public place and watch people doing things and imagine what they're saying to each other. That I'm just nosy. Yeah, so much fascinates me. Right now, where I am at the moment, other mothers and how they organize themselves fascinates me because, I obviously need help in that area. But I would love to do, there's a million different things I would love to do. I meet someone at a dinner party, like the other night I met a surgeon and I thought, God, in another life, that would be so fascinating to do. And I'm at that stage of my life where, gone are the days when I think, oh, I could do that. I could retrain. Yeah, it's not going to happen anymore. So, I'm becoming very, very painfully aware of my own mortality right now. Yeah, why not? Why not? I do find it fascinating. I love the idea of being able to sort of open somebody up and then like look inside and take out bad bits and put in good bits. And that is just extraordinary to me.
So if you'd met him instead of finding the stocking with the seeds, you might be a surgeon right now.
I'll tell you the other thing that fascinates me is I love true crime. I've got quite a gory sense of, my sensibility. And I love listening to true crime. I find that totally fun. And police investigations fascinate me. And I do listen to a lot of podcasts while I'm gardening. True crime podcasts. I'm a real true crime geek.
So let's talk about your podcast before we wrap everything up.
Oh, yes. My podcast is called the Virgin Gardener Podcast. And I do it with my great friend, Andrew, who I met online. And I just said to him one day, don't you think we should do a podcast together? Because everyone else is doing it. Like, we should do one. Ours would be better. And he was like, yeah, let's do it. So it's a bit like pissing in the wind sometimes, because you don't get, apart from the feedback that you get from people online, you don't actually know how many people are listening at all.
Yeah, it's so weird. It's the quietest thing I've ever created.
Yeah, but it's also a real joy to do. I love podcasts. I did it because I don't have time to read blogs. I only really listen to podcasts. So I thought, well, there's no point in me blogging if I don't read other blogs. I do blog a little bit, but I think podcasts are the way forward, personally.
Yeah, because you can do them while you're cooking or cleaning the dishes or in the garden.
And we've done 3 so far, and we absolutely love it. It's time consuming and it's a little bit scary technically, I find, but luckily I have an amazing partner who helps me with that. So my podcast partner, Andrew. So yeah,
I am really enjoying it. It's one of the few that I have been able to keep up with as I have been recording this.
Good.
So you're so funny.
Oh, well, thank you.
I love that the tone of it. It's a lot of gardening stuff can be really serious.
Yes. Yeah. Well, life is fun, isn't it? Yeah. No, it's nice to chat.
Yeah.
We're, as freelance journalists or bloggers, we're all at home writing a lot. We don't get much time to chat. And then you add in the fact that you're a parent and you might not talk to anyone for days apart from children. And you're only saying, put your pants on to them, So it's really nice to have a good old chinwag with another adult.
Yeah. If someone wanted to dabble in gardening for the first time, where would they start?
At your back door. If you've got a piece of earth, have a look and see what's growing in it. I think watch first. Watch and wait. If you've inherited a garden or a piece of land, watch and wait for the first year. Just try not to rush into anything. For God's sake, don't chop anything down unless you absolutely know. Unless you absolutely hate it. Just watch and see what goes on first. But I'm trying to think of a fun, practical project for someone that's never done any gardening before. And I've got to be inclusive and think about those people that don't actually have a garden. And I think most people have a windowsill. So perhaps plant some herbs. Just the herbs that you enjoy cooking with, and see what they do. Some herbs are annuals, some are perennials, some are shrubs. Some are subshrubs, and you'll learn a lot just from planting herbs.
Yeah.
You'll learn, all that sort of different stuff.
That's where I started, so yeah.
Yeah, there you go. It's a good place to start.
Well, once you grow something and you eat it, there's something really kind of empowering about that.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. Yeah, that gets most people going. And there's something so wonderful about, honestly, I think that the only thing that separates top chef cooking from other people's cooking is lashings of herbs. Chefy people, they just put lashings of herbs on top and it always looks...
Yeah, it was Jamie Oliver, that inspired me to start the garden, because he's always using these fresh herbs, and we don't live in London. We can't get all that stuff at the supermarket sometimes. And so I was like, well, I guess I'll try to grow a basil plant.
Yeah. So my friend Mark Diacono, who runs Britain's first climate change farm, it's called Otter Farm, he names herbs as he calls them transformers, and they really are. You can lift any food out of the ordinary and into the sublime just by adding the right herb. So it really is a complete joy giver.
Yeah.
Herbs for the win.
Great place to start. I think we already know the answer to this, but where is the best place to connect with you online?
Well, I lurk on Instagram, really, or you can email me via my newsletter or just message me via Instagram. I don't really go near Facebook, sadly, it's just too much. Yeah, or my website. Just go to my website and email me.
Yeah.
Easy.
And I'll put all the links to those in the show notes. And thank you so much. This has been awesome.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Sarah. It's been an absolute pleasure.
that's it for today's episode, and I hope to see you at camp. You can find the show notes and a link to Camp Kindle at kindlecuriosity.com. And a big thanks to all of my patrons for your support and for making this podcast advert-free.